Welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast, the show that empowers gay men to live their fullest, healthiest lives. Whether you're navigating relationships, mental health, intimacy, finances, career, or personal growth, Ken Howard, a licensed clinical social worker in California, certified psychiatric social worker, and ASEC certified sex therapist, is here to guide you with over 30 years of experience, specializing in gay male individuals, couples, and polycules. As the founder of GayTherapyLA.com and GayCoachingLA.com. And now, today's episode.
Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about when you're ugly, a gay man's guide to physical unattractiveness. Now, the minute I say that, I realize that that is a very provocative thing to say, because you're ugly is probably one of the most insulting things that anyone can ever say to anyone else. It's aggressive and it strikes to their core if it's said as an insult. But one thing that I don't see anyone else talking about, or certainly my colleagues, is about the awkward reality about the range of generic, widespread physical attractiveness, or the lack thereof, in people, and in this case, specifically gay men. I've seen some threads on Reddit about this and a couple of articles, although it's a very under-discussed topic, but actually a very prominent issue in our society. So even though people rush to reassure people, oh, you're fine, or, just go into denial when somebody self-deprecates or says something self-deprecating, there's certainly something very problematic and negative about someone calling themselves ugly or unattractive. But the reality is, in this world, for all genders and all sexual orientations, there is a social capital of generic attractiveness. Now, lots of people find different things attractive or unattractive, and it's very subjective. But there's also this idea of, oh, get real. Very few people are going to call, Henry Cavill unattractive, even though some might not find him attractive, really, if they're straight guys who only prefer pretty women, or maybe gay men or straight women who like a different kind of man and don't find him particularly attractive. But if you take a poll around our world and show a picture of fill in the blank, Henry Cavill, or Pamela Anderson, maybe at her prime, or Pietro Biselli, or any kind of supermodel or actor or actress that's known for their appearance, they're going to have widespread appeal, literally making millions upon millions of dollars in their films, for example. And part of it may be their acting talent or the quality of the writing or the directing of the film as a piece of entertainment. But a lot of it's going to be based on the star. Historically, who wouldn't call someone like Elizabeth Taylor or Paul Newman physically attractive? But what about on the other end of the scale? If we can recognize that Elizabeth Taylor or Paul Newman were physically attractive people, extraordinarily so, we have to also recognize that there's the other side of the scale. People who many people would find physically unattractive. And of course, there's some kind of a bell curve or a range. And we also could say, well, what does it matter? The problem is that it does matter. And people who are extraordinarily beautiful know that they are, and they might go into things like acting or music or modeling, let's say, things that capitalize on their appearance. And people who know that they are especially unattractive in the broad sense might not aspire to be a supermodel or a leading man or a leading lady in acting, or other kinds of professions where appearance is a factor. Now, luckily, appearance is not a factor in many different fields, And there's lots of different shapes and sizes in the world. And things like compassion and goodwill and the dignity of all human beings, I would add animals to that also, but the dignity of all human beings is an extremely important value. But for today, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about physical unattractiveness as a phenomenon and what that means, and about facing the reality of physical attractiveness or not. In a culture where pretty privilege is real, where social status, dating opportunities, sexual opportunities, and even professional success can be influenced by how attractive someone is, it's difficult to ignore the reality that not everyone is blessed with conventional good looks. Some people are exceptionally attractive and receive social advantages for it. Others, though, recognize that they are on the other end of the spectrum, where attractiveness is not one of their strengths. And this isn't about self-deprecation or a negative self-image driven by insecurity. It's about facing reality in an honest and pragmatic way. If you've ever thought, I know I'm ugly, or have received feedback that confirms it in some way, the question becomes, how do you deal with this knowledge in a way that allows you to live a fulfilling life? So let's break it down without the usual platitudes of, oh, you're just fine the way you are. So number one is accepting the truth without self-punishment. There is an important difference between accepting a reality and hating oneself for it. Recognizing that you are not conventionally attractive does not mean that you are unworthy or unlovable or that you have no social value. Beauty is one social currency. It's an important social currency. We see it everywhere. But it's not the only social currency. The key to coping with physical unattractiveness is to acknowledge it without self-loathing. Many people find self-acceptance difficult because they attach their worth too heavily to external validation. But think about it. Attractiveness is largely genetic. Did you choose your bone structure, your facial symmetry, your height, your hair shape or color or size or density or pattern? So why blame yourself for something that you had no control over? Instead of wasting energy just wishing that you looked different, or going to extremes in plastic surgery or extreme dieting or extreme diets or whatever, shift your focus toward what you can control. Number two is finding other forms of social currency. If physical attractiveness is one form of social currency, what are some others? Charisma and humor. Being socially engaging and funny can make you magnetic, even if you're not traditionally handsome. Confidence and self-respect. People are drawn to those who carry themselves with assurance, regardless of their looks. Kindness and generosity. People appreciate those who make them feel valued. Intelligence and knowledge. Being interesting and insightful gives people a reason to engage with you. Skill and talent, whether it's in music or writing or business or activism or athleticism, developing expertise makes you stand out. Many of the most influential and charismatic and successful people in history were not conventionally attractive. What they lacked in looks, they made up for in impact. So ask yourself, what can I cultivate that will make me stand out? Number three is understanding and navigating pretty privilege. Yes, pretty privilege exists. Attractive people are more likely to be hired, promoted, invited to social events, and pursued romantically, and certainly objectified sexually. They're smiled at more. They are listened to more. They're given of the benefit of the doubt more often. They receive lighter sentences if they're convicted of a crime. They're convicted of a crime less often. There's just countless advantages about appearance that have nothing to do with the issue at hand, which is, of course, dramatically unfair, but it's also a truism that lasts in every nation, in every culture, and throughout history. But what can you do with this knowledge? Accept it as an unfair reality, but not a personal failure. It's frustrating, but it's part of human psychology that pretty privilege exists in our society. Work on areas where you can still enhance your presence. Grooming, styling, posture, and presence can all enhance how people perceive you, even if they don't make you conventionally attractive. Surround yourself with people who value deeper qualities. The superficial world will always exist, particularly when we see it so much in the gay male community. But so will circles of people who care more about substance. We may feel like that's rare. We may feel like that's impossible, but it's not impossible. It's actually there. It's just that the pretty privileged superficiality, especially in the gay male community, but also in other communities, especially with women or supermodels or music or television or movies especially. But circles of people who care more about substance are there, and we have to have that fundamental belief in abundance that just because pretty privilege on the surface seems ubiquitous and powerful, it doesn't really have the last word. So recognize unconscious biases in yourself. Even if you're on the receiving end of beauty bias, have you ever caught yourself treating conventionally attractive people differently? That's a thing that we all do because it's part of human psychology, and people can't really help it. It's kind of instinctual, kind of animal kingdom stuff about procreation. Even among same-sex attraction, there's an element there that relates to human procreation. Even though two men and two women can't naturally make babies, there is leftover kind of genetic, procreative human-animal elements that come into play here. An awareness of all of this can help you reshape your thinking. Number 4 is cultivating emotional resilience. It's natural to feel resentment or sadness about how society treats people differently based on appearance. But the question is, how much power are you willing to give that frustration? You can't control the gut reactions of strangers, but you can control how much their reactions define your sense of worth. Here are some strategies to keep your confidence intact. Number 1 is practice emotional detachment. Not every frown or snub or lack of attention is about you. People have their own biases and moods and preoccupations and even preferences, even quirks about what they find attractive or unattractive. Number 2 is build a life that fulfills you. Focus on your passions and your friendships and your goals so that external validation becomes less relevant. Number 3 is limit social comparisons. Avoid dwelling on social media influencers or dating app culture that reinforces really unrealistic beauty standards. Remember also that beauty is very transient. People who were known to be attractive supermodels or actors or actresses in history, age eventually catches up with them. They might always be generally considered more conventionally attractive than the average person their age. I don't know, Brad Pitt or something. But for most people, beauty fades as people move through the developmental ages of life. So it's really a situation or an opportunity that is inherently transient in the life of a person. So number 5, how therapy can help. Things like a cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy approaches. Therapy can be a powerful tool in helping people navigate self-perception and societal biases and how you deal with societal biases. 2 particularly effective approaches are cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, it's about reframing negative thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps people identify and challenge distorted thinking patterns. If you constantly think, I'm ugly, so no one will ever respect or love me, CBT helps you examine the evidence and replace that thought with something more constructive. So step 1 is identifying those automatic negative thoughts. Step 2 is really questioning their accuracy and analyzing them and discussing them from different points of view. Number 3 is replacing those negative thoughts with rational and more self-compassionate beliefs. For example, rather than saying, no one will ever find me attractive, you could reframe it as, attractiveness is subjective, and I have other qualities that make me appealing to others. In ACT, it's about accepting and moving forward. Acceptance and commitment therapy encourages people to accept their reality rather than fighting against it. It helps you focus on what truly matters to you rather than what society dictates. In a battle between you and society, it really comes back to you. I mean, sure, you have to obey laws and you have to deal with certain realities in society, but really the driver of your life should always come back to you and your value system and your talents and your own limitations and making your way in the world. It's what clinical social workers like me call the person in environment theory. You influence your environment, and in some ways your environment influences you. But there's a lot of power in the idea that, hey, the buck stops here with me. Louise Hay, one of my favorite inspirational New Age authors, mostly popular in the 80s and 90s, used to say, the point of power is in this moment. We're making choices constantly. What we do, where we point our eyes, what we do with our hands and feet, what we say, and how we say it. We're constantly influencing our environment by what we do. So in ACT, step 1 is just accept that some people absolutely will judge you based on looks, especially in the gay community. There's people online, there's people in bars and clubs, there's people in the street. Gay men tend to be like other kinds of men, other kinds of males in the animal kingdom, sizing up others. Now, oftentimes in the animal kingdom, same gender beings will size up the other and will be in competition for mating from a procreative standpoint. And certainly, straight men will do this too. But gay men also will compete with other men at the same time that they are attracted to them. Or they will assess them and decide that they are not attracted to them, and they will act accordingly. We've all probably experienced that. But that doesn't mean that their judgment defines your worth. Some people might be crazy about you and find you sexy or attractive, and other people might find you not at all sexy, not at all their type, and not one iota of sexual attractiveness, and that's okay, because their judgment doesn't define your worth. So step 2 is identify what makes your life truly meaningful. If we all looked the same, for example, but yet everything inside of us was different in terms of our interests and our aptitudes and our value systems, think about, when you self-reflect, what makes your life truly meaningful when you're looking out your eyes and not worrying about what other people's eyes on you means for you. You are the boss. You count first. Step 3 is take action toward your values. What about your friendships or your career or your expressing your creativity, expressing your sexuality, activism in politics, or being involved in things like hobbies or activities or games or sports or some kind of challenge? All of those things about friendships and career and activity, notice how appearance is not part of the discussion of those exactly. There's an element. Attractive people tend to cultivate more friends more easily. But that doesn't mean that people who are conventionally unattractive, however we define that they don't make friendships. Lots of people do. People who are not conventionally attractive make friends, get jobs, get laid, are part of families and part of communities and neighborhoods. So we have to remember that our world is made up of all different kinds of shapes and sizes. Not every woman looks like Elizabeth Taylor, because if they did, people like Elizabeth Taylor wouldn't stand out, or a Paul Newman, or people who are non-binary and especially attractive too. So rather than wasting energy to fix an unchangeable trait or going to great lengths to change an unchangeable trait, forcing the change, such as through extreme plastic surgery or things like that, ACT helps you redirect all of that energy into creating a fulfilling, meaningful life. So my final thoughts on this is about the importance of self-worth. At the end of the day, your worth is not dictated by conventional attractiveness alone. We might feel that way when we're in some place like Los Angeles or New York or Milan or Paris or some place where show business and fashion really preside as a cultural dominance, especially professionally. It may feel like that. But across the whole space of the world and throughout history, your worth is not dictated by conventional attractiveness. There's too many people for that to be so. We have to have some kind of a bell curve or a range between the extremely beautiful and the extremely traditionally unattractive, however we define each of those. So, yes, the world is sometimes unfair in its treatment of people based on looks. And that is a great injustice that causes a lot of heartache. But that does not mean that your life cannot be rich and fulfilling and full of connection. By developing things like social skills, self-confidence, cultivating your individual talents and your emotional resilience, you shift the focus from what you lack, which is so easy to focus on, oh, I lack this, I lack that, to what you offer. Focusing on what you offer is where true self-worth begins. Being conventionally attractive is one way to get social and romantic and sexual attention, but it is far from the only way. And for those who cultivate presence and personality and purpose, it can become irrelevant altogether. So if you want to talk more, if you've struggled with self-worth and attractiveness or social acceptance, especially in the gay community, and you want professional guidance, I offer specialized therapy and specialized coaching specifically for gay men for a long time, 32 years now. So to reach me to talk about how we might work together professionally, you can call me or text me in the United States at 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. Or email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com. That's the therapy website for guys in California. Or ken@gaycoachingla.com. And that's for guys in California who want coaching instead of therapy, or for any United States and countries, across the world. And of course, visit the websites for more information, gaytherapyla.com and gaycoachingla.com for my blog article library, for information about my services, information about me and my background and what I do and have done and plan to do. So you deserve to feel valued and confident and empowered, no matter how you look. So thanks, and I'll see you next time.